What's good, YouTube? This is Boxingwave, and we are back with another fight breakdown. This weekend, Emanuel Navarrete is going to be defending his WBO super featherweight title. That's up at 130 against the former champion Oscar Valdez. All right, this fight is going to be on ESPN Plus at 8 p.m. Eastern, and I should be covering the fight live along with the Anthony Joshua fight, whoever he decides to pick as his opponent. We still haven't officially got an opponent for Anthony Joshua, but I should be covering both cards Saturday afternoon into the evening. Okay, this fight is a good fight. I actually personally think this is going to be the best fight of the weekend. I think the styles match it. They match up perfectly with these two. You know what I mean? Both of these guys got knockout power. Both of these guys are pretty aggressive, just different styles. And it just matched up well. Two Mexican fighters. And I like it. I like both. I'm a big fan of both fighters. You guys know I like Emanuel Navarrete, even with all the defensive flaws and everything. I like how unorthodox he is. And Oscar Valdez, I like him as well. Always been a fan of him since I started watching him years back. I like the both of these fighters, you know, and these guys are not going to back down. And it should be a good clash of styles this Saturday. Okay, so let's talk about the fight. Navarrete is 3-division champion now. All right, he picked up his first title, I believe, down at 122 against Isaac Dogbeg. Went up to 126, picked up another title up there. Being, you know, both of these fighters been extremely active. You know, he wasn't there that long, but he moved up to 130 in his last fight to fight Liam Wilson, you know, a known guy, at least to me, and picked up the vacant title over there with the WBO. And, you know, the thing with Navarrete, he's 28 years old, only been defeated one time, all right, years ago, before I even knew who he was. He has 37 wins, 31 knockouts, big KO artist, you know what I mean? The thing with him is that he's very unorthodox, all right? He's not technically sound at all. He has a lot of defensive issues. You can watch this fight and just pick up on a lot of issues. But he hasn't lost, at least until he started fighting in a championship level, you know? And his style is awkward, you know what I mean? And he's capable to do a lot of things. The switching, you know, from the odd angles, you know, it's like he has balance issues, but because he has these issues with his feet, right, he's not doing everything from a traditional way and throwing punches from a traditional way, or he has these angles which kind of throw his opponents off, you know. And he's pretty explosive, high volume type of guy too, very powerful. And there's little things about him that are really sneaky. Like, he has a very sneaky 1-2. So Navarrete, he likes to throw punches, like wide punches, like wide hooks from like his hip. You know what I mean? And he leads with them a lot. But he has very long arms. So sometimes he appears to be out of range, and he can quickly be in range because he'll lunge in and throw these wide hooks. Yes, he leaves himself open for counters for sure. All right, but it's how fast and how unexpected it's the way, it's the reason why he's had so much success, because it's so sudden. You know what I mean? And I think that's the way, especially because the way he throws him, from so low, you might think he's going to the body, you know, but that hook will come and clunk you on the side of the head, and now he's teeing off with combinations, you know, before you know it, and then now you're down. You know what I mean? Because he's very powerful. He got long arms. It's not like he's trying to control distance and stuff. Like, he has a decent jab, but it's not like he's trying to keep it a rangy fight. You know what I mean? It's just he's awkward, you know, and him switching and creating more angles often during a fight it gives a lot of these guys trouble, especially because of his power. All right. But with those wide hooks and stuff, you got to watch out from the 1-2. I noticed that his jab in the right hand, when he's throwing straight down the middle, which is not common, is usually unexpected. He throws so many hooks that out of nowhere he hits you with a quick 1-2, and that's the shot that's normally hurting his opponents. You know what I mean? It's not always these wide, wild hooks that he's throwing, he's lunging in with. You know, every now and then, if you notice that he'll keep throwing these hooks, and then out of nowhere he'll throw a sharp 1-2 with a lot of power on it, and that's the shot that's putting these guys down, or at least hurting them. So you have to watch him. He's very, very tricky because he has a large range of punches in his arsenal. All right, so he's a very tricky fighter, and he has a lot of volume, and he's a guy that starts extremely slow. If you look at all of his fights, I've been watching his fights for a minute now, he always looks like he's in trouble in the earlier rounds. You know, even guys that he stops, like a Liam Wilson, where he was knocked down. All right, like Eduardo Baez in a fight where the guy Baez is coming forward, he looks like he's in control of the fight. Then out of nowhere, Navarrete is pounding you out. So it's like it's these kind of fights where, you know, he's not a good starter, but he's a strong finisher. You know, once he gets a good rhythm going, he's overwhelming you. You know, even if you try to back him up, he doesn't normally do it for too long. You could do it, but it's hard to maintain it, you know, because once he starts opening up and once you start slowing down, that's when he starts getting a nice rhythm going and he's taking you out. All right, but defensive flaws, obviously defensive his flaws are defensive flaws. Has balance issues, like I said. Short shots, all right, that's why he got knocked down by Liam Wilson. Those short counters in between his wide, very wide punches is his kryptonite, you know. And if you're a hooker like Oscar Valdez, that's where his main weakness is going into this fight. And most of his opponents, Liam Wilson did a good job in exposing those flaws early in the fight. Was able to even drop him and knock him down in the 4th round. All right, so, and he's not like a super big puncher or anything like that, you know what I mean? So and another issue is he lunges all the time, you know. Even though he has those very long arms, he lunges in with his hooks often. So yes, from an offensive standpoint, it's good because it catches a lot of these guys off guard. But if you're a good enough counterpuncher to where you're able to time him and catch him with like a check left or right hook coming in, lunging in like that, you'll be able to catch him with a good shot and possibly hurt him. You know what I mean? He's been hurt before. He's been down before. So even though he has a pretty good chin, it's not like he can't get hurt. And plus, he's the guy that's been moving up. He's fought at I think he started professionally down like at 112. Okay, so even though he's grown and he's not a small guy at those weights, he still can be hurt. All right, especially against a puncher like Oscar Valdez. All right, so you know, Emanuel Navarrete, very fun fighter to watch, but a lot of flaws in this game. You know what I mean? But the awkwardness and the angles is what is usually his greatest strengths, and is actually why he's won these fights against these more technically sound boxers. Now you have Oscar Valdez on the other hand, all right? He's 31 wins with 23 knockouts, one defeat against Shakur Stevenson, which was recent, right? He's a 2-division champion, you know, former champion at 130 until he lost to Shakur, was a champion at 126, has fought against some really, really good fighters, all right? I think he's probably fought the better talent between the two, but he's been fighting longer, right? He's a little older, 32 years old, not as many pro fights, but he's been fighting at a higher level for a longer period of time, all right? So Oscar Valdez, when I watch Oscar, you know, and him being with Eddie Reynoso in that camp, and you know, there's a lot of similarities to Canelo. You know, he's normally fighting out of a high guard. He likes to change levels a lot. He has a big left hook. That's his best punch, you know, and he relies on that hook. You know what I mean? But him fighting out of the high guard, of course, you got the strengths and weaknesses to that. I guess, yes, it leaves a lot of openings for him to get shots. You see it a lot in the Shakur Stevenson and the Robson Conceição fights. I think, you know, he has great, you know, technically he's good counterpuncher, good speed. Obviously, he has good powers, good legs. But all of his flaws is usually against these more defensive fighters. You know, even the Adam Lopez, who he rematched in his last fight. Adam Lopez was good defender. He's a pretty good defender. And offensively, I didn't think he brought as much as Conceição did, or obviously not Shakur Stevenson, who was able to drop him and stuff. But Adam Lopez, these guys like Conceição, the last three opponents for Oscar Valdez, were able to expose him and time him and counter him, you know, and make him miss often. But when he's fighting someone like a Miguel Bergelt that is coming forward to him, the guy that's bigger guy that's trying to walk him down, and Oscar is able to fight on his back foot a little bit and look for the counters, that's where he really shines. And I think when people got to understand is, you know, when this fight started to have, there was some talks of this fight going down, probably a couple fights ago for Oscar Valdez. We're looking at the more recent performances, not the Miguel Berchelt, but we're looking at the Shakur Stevenson fight. We're looking at the Conceição fight. We got to remember that these guys that made Oscar look bad, they're very good defensively. You know, they don't fight anything like Emanuel Navarrete. You know what I mean? So you can't dismiss like the styles here. Because I feel like even though Navarrete is not exactly like Berchelt, but there's more similarities to Berchelt than there are for like the other three fighters I just named, or the last three opponents for Oscar Valdez. You know what I mean? So defensively, you know, when it comes to that slickness and all of that, Oscar Valdez has the advantage here. You know what I mean? And even though Navarrete is able to counter, he's not nearly as good as a counter puncher as the last three opponents that Valdez has fought. You know, this matchup is more for Oscar Valdez's liking than some of the other opponents he recently faced, you know. And that includes like Miguel Berchelt. That includes like the Scott Quick fight years ago. You know what I mean? Some of the most recent fights or even older fights. I believe I even remember him seeing him fight Chris. Let me look up his. Did he fight Chris Avalos? You know, when Chris Avalos was still kind of. Let me go to Oscar Valdez. Fights from back in the day. Yeah, Chris Avalos, Gradovich. You know, those could. These are the opponents where they were kind of like, they were able to bring the fight. Scott Quigg. They were able to bring the fight to Valdez, which it's better for him than these guys that Valdez would have to walk down. You know what I mean? And when he's walking these guys down, he's not the best at cutting off the ring. He kind of comes in a straight line. You know what I'm saying? He doesn't really move his head, you know, that well. He's good at changing levels, but the feints, the jab, that's where he misses out sometimes, because I think he relies too much on his hook. You know what I mean? And it's kind of like Canelo, but like a watered down version. No disrespect, because Canelo's just a better fighter. But there are a lot of similarities in the style, but those flaws are still there. Plant was able to time Canelo, and Canelo will come in with these hooks. And if you know, Plant, like a fighter like Plant and some of the other opponents that Canelo has faced, were able to slip and counter with like uppercuts, while Canelo is just trying to time that hook. You know what I mean? Coming in with the high guard and trying to time the hook. Some of these guys were able to counter Canelo, and then some of these guys like Oscar Valdez was able to do it. But a fighter like Emanuel Navarrete, who has the defensive flaws, he's not good defensively, you know? And even though he's great offensively, it's like he takes a while to get going. You know, he kind of overwhelms his opponents after a few rounds. You know, once he figures it out, he starts to put on the pressure. He starts to throw a lot more. But early in the fight, that's the best timing to get Navarrete out of there because he's still trying to figure out. He starts slow. All right, so I honestly think that it can go two ways. You know, Oscar Valdez can start. If Oscar Valdez is to win, I can see him winning by KO. I can see him getting into a good rhythm early. I think he's going to start out great. And Navarrete may never get things going. No matter even if it gets buzzed, even if he gets knocked down. If he's still in the fight, he may not ever get anything going. You know, I can see him losing, like getting stopped late. I can see him getting stopped early. I can see him losing on the cards. You know, but I think for sure Navarrete is going to get hurt, if not dropped at some point in this fight. He's going to walk into some of those left hooks that Oscar Valdez is known for. And on the other hand, I can see Oscar Valdez having success early, but I can see Navarrete starting to pick up the pace at some point. All right. And if he could take Valdez, I could see him outworking Valdez and beating him on points. I don't think Valdez gets stopped. I'm not saying that it's not possible, but Oscar Valdez has shown to be pretty durable. Even in fights where he was hurt or dropped, he's been durable throughout his whole career. You know, I know Navarrete is a beast, but Oscar Valdez has fought on a higher level for many, many years. You know what I'm saying? And he's fought some dogs. So with that being said, I see Navarrete either winning on points, or I see Valdez either winning by stoppage or on points. I'm leaning with Oscar Valdez. I know Oscar hasn't looked great lately, but I think this style works better, fits better. It's more like in a lane of the Miguel Burchell fight, where he's finally, for a while, the last three fights, he's fought some really slick defensive fighters that was able to exploit his offensive and defensive holes. Whereas in this fight, Navarrete is going to be right there for him to counter and stuff. And even though I think he should jab more, I think he should feint more, I think he should change his jab, switch up the pace of the jab. I think, you know, he doesn't really do a good job at keeping his head off the line. Don't have the, reflexes like a Canelo has in fighting that kind of style. Navarrete, too defensively floored, and he's not slick. He's not hard to find. He's going to be right there in front of you. You know what I mean? And even though he has a very long reach, he doesn't really use it. He doesn't really take full advantage of his long reach. So I have Oscar Valdez winning this one. I'm kind of leaning towards a KO, but for now, if I were to put money down to be safe, if you want to be safe, I would put down on straight up. And I know he's the favorite, but if you want to take the risk, I think it's a good risk to take, him winning by KO, because I think he's definitely gonna hurt Emanuel Navarrete. It's more about finishing him off. But with those short counters, that's Navarrete's kryptonite right there, and Oscar Valdez is very good at that. So I think Oscar is winning regardless. It's just about how he's gonna win. He has potential, just like we saw Jake Paul. And even though I didn't do any boxing stuff, Jake Paul was able to hurt Nate Diaz, but just couldn't put him away. And when you put money down on a KO like I did, it's that risk of what if the guy is tough enough to go the distance. And Navarrete has proven and shown that he has a pretty good chin. All right, so that's the risk you got to take in here. But I definitely got Valdez. I'm definitely confident that Valdez is going to win this weekend. All right, so anyway, let me know what you guys think in the comments. Please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Smash the like button, share the video, and I'll see you Saturday when we are covering the fight. All right, later. Peace.